Conservative MP-elect and former party leader Andrew Scheer is going to lead the Conservatives in opposition when the House returns at the end of this month.
For the next few weeks, for procedural reasons, there are some things that require someone to do who has that seat in the House of Commons. I'll be taking, fulfilling those duties, but he's still the leader of the party.
So Scheer was chosen to be the interim opposition leader during the party's first caucus meeting since the federal election, just a week afterwards. The party's leader, Pierre Poilievre, is going to sit out from the House of Commons until a by-election is called and he can run for a new seat. That's in Alberta. So for more What's Next, we're joined once again by Jamie Ellerton, Conservative strategist. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Anne-Marie.
Okay, Andrew Scheer, why did the party choose him? I imagine partly because he put his hand up and said, I'll do it. And what challenges lie ahead?
Yeah, I think if you take a step back, we know that Pierre Poilievre lost his seat, so he's no longer a member of Parliament. Prime Minister Mark Carney has already said he's going to make it easy to pave the way for a by-election to get Pierre back in the seat. So Pierre Poilievre is still the Conservative Party leader. What happened yesterday is Andrew Scheer was chosen to be the interim leader in the House of Commons. So I would expect from here to the summer, obviously the House of Commons is going to come back for its spring session. It might sit a bit late, depending on how much stuff Prime Minister Carney wants to get through the House of Commons before the summer recess. But all this means is that Andrew Scheer is going to be the kind of front and center in the leader's chair in the House of Commons until Pierre gets there. And for the machinery of Ottawa, the opposition leader's office in terms of caucus coordination and day-to-day activities, so much of that in terms of how Ottawa functions goes through the leadership's office, and so he's going to fill that leadership vacuum until Pierre Poilievre's back in the chair.
Just because people are curious, how then does it work with Pierre Poilievre if he's still the party leader? So Andrew Scheer is the one standing up in the House, but then what kind of discussions happen behind the scenes in terms of narrative, positions that they want to take on things, and who answers reporters' questions when when they leave the House?
So there's kind of a couple things there. One, the leader of the Conservative Party, think of it as a private institution, a private organization. Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre is still the leader of the Conservative Party. The Conservative Caucus is formally recognized as a party caucus within the House of Commons parliamentary resources. That's what Andrew Scheer is going to be leading here in the short term. So for in the House of Commons, it'll be Andrew Scheer as interim leader, as well as the rest of the Conservative caucus talking in the House, continuing to ask questions to try and hold the government to account on a day-to-day basis. I suspect what we're still going to see is occasionally you're going to see Pierre Poilievre with a guest pass doing press conferences in the foyer of the House of Commons.
That shot that always drives me crazy where you can see the hangers hanging on either side drives me nuts. How united is the party behind keeping Pierre Poilievre on as leader? How safe is his position?
I think his position is incredibly safe. All people are disappointed in the results. There is no meaningful movement to try and oust him as leader. I think everyone sees the historic result. Yes, we lost the election, but like over 41% of the vote. Any other election, that means Conservatives would be forming government. So there's going to be a post-mortem that is going to take place. But there is no meaningful effort to try and see Pierre Poilievre removed as leader, and I don't think that's going to change.
You know, he reminded the public and the caucus yesterday of the gains that he made, these 25 extra seats, more than 40% support. But he has, since the night that he lost, talked about lessons to be learned. He did promise some changes. One of them I noticed yesterday is this open access to reporters. You know, there wasn't the pre-selected 4 reporters, no follow-up questions, them being kept at a distance. What lessons are going to be top of the list for him as he looks to get his path, as he calls it, the path back to Parliament?
So I think there's probably going to be a few things. He's already said he's going to go on a listening tour. So at this point, this is going to go
so not rallies, listening.
I think it's going to be a lot more Legion halls, pubs, churches, synagogues, community centers, etc., trying to hear what went right, what went wrong, what members want to see, what they think made a difference in their ridings, maybe could have put them over the edge. I suspect after this loss, you're going to see a much more humble Pierre Poilievre going forward. And I think he's going to take that and kind of look to rebuild as to what comes next. I think when you listen to what Canadians are saying, I don't think anyone has an appetite to go back to the polls real fast and try and force another election. But at the same time, Conservatives obviously want to see change. When you take away the big issue of Trump out of the equation, there are a lot of things that this Liberal government under Justin Trudeau got wrong that Conservatives want to see corrected. And I think it's going to be more on those domestic-facing issues where you're going to see Conservatives the loudest trying to push Mark Carney to correct course and continue to offer Canadians an alternative.
What do you expect for him to hear when he goes on this listening tour? Because it looks like somebody's told him to smile more, because I've noticed that a lot in the last couple of days. But in all seriousness, like, people, you know, they got close, but they didn't cross the finish line, and Pierre Poilievre said that. So what is it that you expect him to hear from Conservative members who say something's got to change?
So I think when you look at how obviously the command and control structure you saw in this campaign, there was very little media engagement. Candidates were told not to do all candidates debates, stuff like that. I think you're going to hear people say we have to do this more. There's also just going to be anecdotal stuff where they hear what was working at the doors, what wasn't working at the doors, and the feedback they were giving. Sometimes there's people are kind of have a bit of fear to speak truth to power, especially during a high stakes election. So now that the election's over, it's time for more open conversations, and I suspect that information will flow quite differently.
Something that was new for this election campaign for people is we learned a lot about the people behind the scenes. We don't typically talk about that in Canada in election campaigns, but a lot of criticism has landed at the doorstep of his campaign manager, Jenny Byrne. What is the likelihood of her remaining in this position? He has come out in support of her, saying that we don't need to cut people, we need to expand. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say leadership starts at the top, and that's Pierre Poilievre. And so I think he's going to have to show how he wants to implement changes, how he's going to not remove people that keep a small team, but expand the team to make that grow. Jenny Byrne, although can be a polarizing figure for some as a result of her very tough management and rigid discipline, but she's an incredible campaigner. She's got a ton of skills and an invaluable seat at the table. So I think whether or not she remains as campaign manager, campaign director, what title's there, I think the Conservative Party would be best served to bring more people around the table to grow the team rather than just to throw a sacrificial lamb under the bus. That quite frankly, the Conservative movement in Canada would be weaker without Jenny's contributions.
All right, Jamie Ellerton, Conservative strategist. Great to have you with us here.
Thanks, Anne-Marie.
If you like that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.